up, Google Earth. Wanted to have a look at the London site from the air. I wanted to see, what it is that's so special about this place. And it just so happened that the particular site in Stratford was the only last bit of wasteland that was, that was left vacant in London. It was the one last place that they could do things for something like the Olympics. So it's quite lucky that they had it in the first place. And what I noticed was I started looking at the actual street plan of this place, and to go through it, you've got a number of roads that circle the site, and the first road is a road called the Eastern Cross Route. The East Cross Route, which is a reference to the Eastern Cross. The Eastern Cross is an Orthodox cross, and it's a modified version of the Patriarchal cross. It's got two smaller cross beams across the side. The next road down, you've got Carpenter's Road, which encircles the site. Carpenter, who was a carpenter? Oh, good old Joseph.
Yeah,
he
of
was
course.
a carpenter, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Next road down, you've got a road called the Great Eastern Road. And obviously when you refer to something as the Great Eastern, it's obviously like the Great Eastern Star. So you look into the Great Eastern Star, it turns out that the Order of the Eastern Star is the largest fraternal organisation in the world that both men and women can join, and it was founded by someone highly connected with the Freemasons, and their symbol is the pentagram. So this is the next road down. Yeah. Moving on around the Olympic site. If you envisage we're encapsulating the whole Olympic site here, the next road along is Angel Lane, and obviously the famous angel is the angel Gabriel. So we've got Angel Lane here. Next road along, we've got Temple Mills Lane. Temple Mills, where the watermills belong to the Knights Templar. Yeah. So another connection there. The Knights Templar were the poor fellow soldiers of Christ in the Temple of Solomon. And then encapsulating all of this is Church Road. It's obviously another biblical road name. Yeah. So all the way around the Olympics 2012 site, which you could call Zion if you go with the logo, is biblical road names surrounding the whole site. There's not one road name that's not biblical. So you start looking at that and you think, what the hell is going on? Yeah. This site was supposedly a fluke that they found this, and what we're looking at is something that is clearly quite well planned. So if you move into, like, for instance, there's one road here that's called is the East Cross Route is called the A12. It's another road name for it. And if I move into, say, for instance, hieroglyphics for a start, hieroglyphics back in the days of ancient Egypt, they were seen as talismans, in that a particular hieroglyphic didn't mean like one letter, like a H. It meant a multitude of emotions. It meant a multitude of meanings. And it basically, it drew in the powers of the stars. That's what a hieroglyph was. It was a talisman. Yeah. It wasn't a direct translation. So, like, for instance, when they do a direct translation of the Rosetta Stone, you can't translate hieroglyphics into H, A's and Z's and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? Sure. So basically, if you think of this idea of hieroglyphics as talismans, power of the stars embedded in this symbol, if you want to call it that, and then everyone assumes that the English language moved on from that, and that our letters just meant letters, just to spell words out, and that there weren't symbols at all. But the fact is that if you look into the idea that the power control in Egypt never died out, and they've been endemic to the power structure from the very start, the letters on the English alphabet are just as much hieroglyphs as the hieroglyphics were, the talismans.
I agree,
so
yeah.
If you look at the letter A, for instance, you've got a pyramid with a capstone, a capital letter A. Yeah. And then if you look at an S, you've got a snake. And then if you've got like a dollar sign, you've got a snake rising up what could be a kundalini or, a DNA coil, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. But basically these letters have got meanings behind them. And so this main road that cuts through the Olympics 2012 site, which is called the East Cross Road, is also known as the A12 road. Now there's hundreds of A roads in Britain. And so what are the chances that of all the roads that cross through it were an A12 road, a Pyramid 12 road? Do you see where I'm coming from with it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Very interesting.
It's pretty strange that one road, this is what I'm saying, coincidence is this load of rubbish that this is coincidence. It's not coincidence whatsoever. No. And then you look into the situation of where it's situated in London and Eastern London, and you'll find that it's in two areas. It's separated between Leighton and Leytonstone. And I don't know if you're aware of what a ley line is, but basically,
of course, yeah.
If you look into this, the Olympic site is bang on where two ley lines cross over. So we're on about something that's connected to the energy grid of, you know, the world, like the lifeblood of the earth, if you want to call it that.
Nice.
Interestingly enough, before when commenced work on the Olympics 2012 site as well, I mean, I got this information off a chap on a message board, but he basically said that they'd organised a massive rave on the Olympic 2012 site, in which no doubt there's a lot of government-sponsored drugs out there and a lot of energy being given off. And if you think about these energy lines, and they're inviting people to have raves on these sites, alongside holding some of the biggest like competitions in the world ever, think about what's happening with all that energy. Where is that going? It's probably being fed into the system somewhere, and I think that's. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, for instance, as far as UFOs are concerned and stuff like that. If you look into UFO sightings and stuff, a lot of them can be attributed to being near ley lines and stuff. Because obviously, a UFO isn't necessarily something that's definitely fixed in our particular 3D world. Something that could be obviously of another dimension of sorts.
Yeah.
But basically, like, you've got this Zion street map that's fully biblical in every way, and you then decide. Well, I decided to pick up the Bible. I don't normally pick up the Bible. I'm not that type of person, but basically picked up and went to the book of Mark, and I decided to go to the chapter 11, verse 11. You know, the old 11:11.
Yeah.
We got this passage here. Then Jesus went into Jerusalem and into the temple and looked around at everything. Since it was already late, he went out with his 12 disciples to Bethany. So we've got a mention of Jesus entering Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Which is obviously Zion's the New Jerusalem. And he says that since it was already late, he went out with his 12 disciples to Bethany. Right next to the Olympics 2012 site, down a Roman road, is a place called Bethnal Green. Right next to the Olympics 2012 site, down a Roman road, is a place called Bethnal Green. Bethnal Green, Bethany, sounds the same, pretty close, you know, not too far off.
Yeah.
Bethnal Green is 3.3 miles, 33 degree Masons and everything, 3.3 miles from Charing Cross, the centre of London.
Yeah.
So symbolic again, numerology and everything that goes with it.
Of course, I don't know if you've heard, but if we look at the research of Ralph Ellis, he talks that Mary Magdalene might have been Mary of Bethany. You know, there's a whole connection between Bethany and the you know, the family of Jesus, if you will, or you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, with the whole idea of the Dan Brown bloodline and the Priory of Sion and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's I mean, I'll get onto that shortly, but that's all part of the plan. That's all part of what's intended here. They wanted to unseat the public with the idea that there's a lost bloodline of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, pretty scary. To top it off, but on a funny note, have you heard of EastEnders before?
Come again? Say it again.
EastEnders, the English soap opera.
No, I have not. No.
No, right. It's a popular thing that most of I'd say 90% of the population probably watch it. Unfortunately,
really?
It's those typical soap operas, and if you watch the intro sequence to that. Basically, behind the EastEnders logo, where, you know, on this intro sequence, is the Olympics 2012 site. So basically, this thing that's making everyone forget about what's going on around them, that's distracting them, providing them with rubbish stories and terrible plot lines and everything, you know, stopping people from thinking, is symbolically showing this area on the TV screen every night of the week.
Interesting.
Quite weird.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, I mean, now I can get onto. I think I've set a good standing for this whole idea of Zion and this biblical event of sorts.
You know what I think we should do like this, Rick. I think that we should take a break right here, actually, because this has been basically an hour-long preface here, and you know, obviously I've got tons of questions and comments, but I definitely want to just let you kind of lay out what you have here, so to speak, and see where this leads us. So I'm going to ask you, Rick, to just basically continue on the trail that you ended in our first segment, if you will.
Okay. Right, well, obviously we've laid out a ground plan with a street map of, you know, the Zion Olympics in 2012, like biblical road names left, right and centre, symbology and symbols and everything, you know, it's all over the place. So I sat down and I started thinking to myself, so what is going to happen? Obviously this is something that's clearly been in the the making for. I mean, I'd presume that those roads have been named them roads for over 100 years, because the street map hasn't changed in that time. And so what I started looking into was the idea of the Trinity, because obviously the pyramid numerology and everything gets involved in all of this, and you know, obviously I think there's a lot to be answered for in there. And so obviously the precession of the equinoxes is a 26,000 year cycle, in which a roughly 26,000 year cycle, and takes just over 2,000 years to transition into a new age. Obviously 26,000 years through 12 signs of the zodiac, and that's about 2,100 for a new age. And obviously with the dawn of Christianity under Jesus, we entered the age of Pisces, which was symbolised by a fish. And prior to that, under the age of Aries, we were symbolically represented with Moses in his ram's horn. So, you know, and we're reportedly moving into the 11th astrological sign of Aquarius, which is the water bearer. And so you start looking into religion as a whole, and you realise that every time that there's, you know, one of these kind of you know, transition of the ages, if you want to call it that. There's almost like a new Trinity event, which finds itself, you know, radically shaping the landscape. So, for instance, the last Trinity event we had essentially was the Jesus, Joseph, and Mary, who had been touched by the angel Gabriel Trinity. And obviously, in Christianity as a whole, you've got the Holy Trinity, which is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, which is symbolic again for the angel Gabriel. Hindu religion, we've got Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. The Jewish Trinity, which essentially not as personified, but was Moses, Ark of the Covenant, and the Temple. And then obviously moving into the human body, we've got the spirit, body, and soul. You know, we've got it all. But the fundamental Trinity of the ages, like that started it all, was the Osiris, Isis, and Horus connection. Obviously Osiris and Isis, mother and father, giving birth to Horus, who was essentially personified, and it was the sun. But so, given that we've got this 1776 on the gold, the Great Seal on the dollar bill, starting at 1776, we've got the Latin of Novus Ordo Seclorum, and it's literally Latin for New Order of the Ages. So it's not New World Order, it's New World Order of the Ages. So it's obviously insinuating it's to do with the transition of the equinox, of the ages moving into the sign of Aquarius. And so I started thinking to myself, well, you know, if we're moving into this, we're going to have to expect new leaders. We're going to have to expect this new kind of, you know, forefront of religion that's going to come forward and, you know, save the planet as such. Yeah, well, that's how they're going to, like, deal with it.
Sell it to us, yeah.
Yeah, how are you going to sell it to us? Come on, give us your best shot. Basically, I started looking towards royalty, because obviously, you know, royalty seems to be where it's at, in the sense of the coat of arms of Great Britain. It's on there. But everywhere I look, it always leads me to royalty. It's a bit like, you know, David Icon's reptilian kind of stuff. It always kind of leads to this weird thing, whatever you want to call it. And obviously, William is a symbolic person within, like, the continuation of the royal family and everything. But basically, I've nothing to go on at first, and I just had this real small whim, and I thought, Diana, is she going to be the personification of Isis? You know, is she going to be the next person to be identified with this god? And thinking it through, it's like, you know, quite probably not, but, you know, let's have a look anyhow, may as well have a look. And so basically, to just talk about Isis a little bit. Isis is a moon goddess, so symbolised by the moon, and she can be identified with the Greek god Artemis, she can be identified with the Roman god Diana, and the angel Gabriel, which is the Holy Ghost. And she's always the third in the Trinity. You know, she's the apex of the pyramid. She's the all-seeing eye, and this is correlated because if you watch, for instance, the film Constantine with Keanu Reeves, I only watched this the other week, but there's a scene in there where there's a particular actor who plays the angel Gabriel, and Keanu Reeves walks up to her and he says, "What have you been seeing with your all-seeing eye of late?"
Yes, I spoke with the bishop.
Yes. I know what you want, son.
Still keeping your all-seeing eye on me. I'm flattered.
right? No one would pick up on that unless you knew what, if you read this stuff, but it was there.
Yeah.
There was obviously the connection between the all-seeing eye and the angel Gabriel.
Yeah.
So, out comes Google, as it does, and I started doing a search for Princess Diana and Isis. So the first thing I stumbled across, Princess Diana's perfume, her official perfume, is called Isis. So, it's like quite a good connection for a start. She's only got one official perfume and it's called Isis. So you start looking into things a bit more, and then you see that Princess Diana has got a memorial, which is a ring of water. And it's in the Serpentine, right next to Buckingham Palace in London, and I went down there to have a look at it and see if I could see anything else. But basically, this ring has east and west kind of flows of water, and the flow down this ring, and then at the other end they conjoin, so east and west meet. So if you think of that symbology of east and west meeting, Islam and Christianity conjoining, do you know what I mean? The whole idea of unifying something into one.
Yeah.
So there's the symbology of the unification of two extremes in this ring of water. But basically, if you look into Isis, she's identified with the Holy Ghost, as I've said, and the angel Gabriel. And now in the film, The Lord of the Rings, which is an esoteric piece of work by J.R. Tolkien, obviously everyone knows the Lord of the Rings because it's been put on the cinema screens, but there's a character in there called Galadriel. And if you look into the history of the character Galadriel, she was identified with the angel Gabriel, i.e. that's what she was, that's what she's symbolic for.
Yeah.
And she was the wearer of a water ring. She controlled the water ring. So obviously you've got Princess Diana, water ring memorial, where east and west meet, combined with the angel Gabriel and Lord of the Rings, or Galadriel being the water ring bearer. So you've got this symbolic figure and this this symbolism running throughout. So moving on to the next thing, how else can I identify Diana with Isis? And so you start looking at the Pont d'Alma, where she died, where she had a horrific car crash. Obviously there's stuff on the internet already that insinuates that the Pont d'Alma was a pagan sacrificial site. And it was used like ritually for hundreds of years, like prior to the modernisation of the area.
Right.
Outside of the tunnel, we have a Flame of Liberty, which is in tribute to Diana's passing.
Yeah.
The Flame of Liberty, which is similar to the Olympic torch. Well, in fact, it is the Olympic torch. But if you think about the Flame of Liberty, and then you think to the Statue of Liberty in New York. The Statue of Liberty, I mean, Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval will all state that the Statue of Liberty in New York is symbolic for ISIS. And outside where Diana died, you've got this, Flame of Liberty statue, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
And again, if you go back to the Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall, Isis carries with her the sacred fire religiously preserved and kept burning in a special temple by the Vestal Virgin. The fire is genuine, immortal flame of Isis. So, symbolically, what she's got outside the Pont d'Alma is a connection to Isis yet again. So, moving on, I'd got wind of a tribute in Harrods, and this is where, obviously, do you know much about the Diana murder inquest and everything that goes with it?
Much of it, not all the details, but the overarching story is very familiar to me, yes. Right,
yeah, obviously there's the whole conspiracy, the idea that she was murdered, and Al-Fayed believed that she was murdered, and there's the fight with the royal family, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go to Harrods, and this is where it's proof that both sides are in on the same act, and this shows that this whole idea of the conspiracy of the murder of Princess Diana is all part of the intended stage play that's been going on all along. In Harrods, I went up to him and I said, "Where's the Princess Diana